In this lesson, we'll find out what an ANI or Elastic Network Interface is. This is a logical component of a VPC. It will act as a virtual private network card. Let's take the example of an availability zone. I have an AC2 instance here that has an ATH0 network card to which we'll attach a primary ENI that will allow us to provide our AC2 with connectivity through a private IP address. An ENI can have the following attributes: a primary private address, one or more secondary IPv4 addresses. For this example, one could easily add a second ETH1 card that would provide a second private IP address as a secondary ENI to be able to communicate with other instances or to be able to do failover or load balancing. An ENI allows us to have one elastic IPv4 address per private address. It will also allow us to have one IPv4 elastic IP address per public address. We can also have a public IP address through an ENI. An ENI can belong to one or more security groups. It can also be assigned to a MAC address. There are other parameters and attributes, but these are the main ones, and we will come back to the others later. It is possible to create an independent ENI and then assign it to an instance on the fly, which is ideal for failover. ENIs are linked to availability zones, so an ENI cannot be used in another availability zone than the one in which it was created. So for the example, we'll create a second machine with a first network card, and we'll create a scenario where the instance that communicates with its secondary ENI fails. We may have a machine here that does the same job, and so what we're going to do is we're going to reassign our secondary ENI to our second instance, which will allow us to quickly switch to a working server if our first instance is not working. Now we'll see in the console how this works. We are going to launch two instances quickly. So 2 in T2 micro. So those two machines will be set with default VPC. For the subnet, we'll take EU West 3A. Then I do the following: storage, tags, the safety group, we check and launch. Now our machines are being created. Here we can see interesting information. So we have a private IP address and a public IP address. We can also see that we are on our EU West 3 availability zone and our other machine is also here. What is also interesting is that we will find here in the network interface ETH0. So if we click on it, we see that our interface ETH0 is attached to the interface ID, so the ENI with this long string. So what happens if we click on our ENI? So we can see that we have our two machines, both have private and public IP addresses. If you want to access the network interfaces, you go to Network here and Network Interface. You also have the possibility, as I did, to right-click on this link. I'm going to remove the filter here, and so we can see that I have two ENIs, two network interface IDs that were created at the same time I created my machines. And if we move a little bit further, we can see that the status of our interfaces are in use with one public IP address each and two different private addresses because we have two different instances. The interesting thing about this interface is that you can create your own network interface. I will call it my ENI. The availability zone will remain the same. Here we can choose to automatically assign an IP address or define a custom IP address. The Elastic Fabric adapter is one of the elements of this interface that we'll see at the end of the training. You can also assign security groups. We'll take the security group we use to launch our virtual machine and create our ENI. So I remove the filter again. I can see that I have three ENIs, the one that we created when I created my machines, and the one that I created myself. Now we can attach our newly created ENI to one of our instances. So attach. We see that the status has changed to in use. Let's go back to our instances. We'll update. On our machine here, we can see that I have a first network interface linked to a first NIC, which will provide us with a private IP address and a second address, a second network card with a different IP address. From here, we can go back to our ENI. We'll say that our ENI here is going to be detached. So I'm going to detach it and I'm going to attach it. So it takes a few moments and then refresh. Now that my ENI is available again, I can attach it to my second instance. It takes a little while. I go back to my instances and I see here my first instance. So I refresh. My first instance has only one network interface left. My second instance has my second interface. Now, if we go back to our ENI, we can manage the IP addresses associated with it. We'll be able to add and remove some. Which will be interesting. Then we can also change and assign additional security groups, for example. So this will allow us to have a greater security of our network connection of our ENI. What will be interesting for us and important for the training is to say that here we have a primary IP address, so a primary ENI that provides us with a private address, a secondary ENI that we can attach or detach to other instances. So a secondary ENI can be detached and a primary ENI cannot be detached from its instance. That's it for ENI.